2025. This is a meeting of the Land Use Review Board. I am Janet Hurley, the chair, and I'll ask board members to introduce themselves as I see them on screen. Kirsten.
Kirsten Saltian, board member, present.
Brooke.
Brooke Dingeldine, board member, present.
Alex.
Alex Weinhagen, board member. Hello, everyone.
And Sarah.
Sarah Had, board member. Hello.
Doke. That is 5 of us, all of us here. Are there any updates to the agenda from board members? Sarah.
I would like to add under E, FY26 budget adjustment. I believe though everything was in our packet, it just didn't make it onto the agenda.
Okay. Thank you. Yep. Do we have to make a motion for that to change the agenda?
I would like to
I
make a
don't think so.
motion to
You don't?
amend the agenda if necessary.
Okay.
I think technically it's supposed to be my motion.
All right. Well,
You
Sarah
can-
made a
can-
motion. Brooke, you want to
I'll
second it?
I'll second
Oh.
it.
Okay, Brooke got it. Sorry, Alex. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And that is unanimous. Okay. Do we have any public present at the moment? Looks like no.
No one in Montpelier.
Okay. Consent agenda, review and approve the September 29th meeting minutes.
I'll move to approve as amended per our discussion today.
Okay, thank you. Sarah?
I'll second and like to offer some amendments.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Is that all right if I share screen for a minute to show you the amendments that I'm contemplating? Is that correct procedure or?
I don't know that we have to. We can ask if the board members have all reviewed those proposed amendments that Sarah offered. I see nods all around. So the board members have seen that you have offered 2 paragraphs of descriptive narrative for the Tier 1A discussion at the last meeting. And so that looks good. Are there any other proposed amendments to the September 29th minutes?
Just a couple of typos in the revisions that Sarah is suggesting. You know, you'll spell check. I think we'll see them, and I think there were just 2. So otherwise, no other changes.
Okay, once we incorporate them, we will do a spell check. Thank you, Alex. Okay, any other discussion on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That is unanimous. The September 29th minutes are approved with changes as discussed. Okay, moving on to operations, budget, and legislative. Let's start with the fiscal 27 budget. Rachel, do you want to guide us through that discussion?
Sure, and happy to share screen, but like you amended the agenda today, I would like to start with the fiscal year 27 budget line items and then have a discussion about the FY26 budget adjustment line items as well. So, you know, at our last board meeting, we went through some of the milestone timelines associated with this process, as well as some background information around how the budget is created and structured. I suppose at this point, I'm open to explaining any of that again. or providing clarity on any points and or diving into the line items themselves. So thoughts from the board members about how you want to move through this next agenda item.
So can I ask whether board members have specific questions about line items?
Yes.
Any, Alex does. So let's do that first, and perhaps you could share screen as we do that, Rachel.
Sure.
And Alex, since you spoke up with an affirmative, do you want to ask your first question?
Yes, just pulling up the document from last time so I can give you that. And Rachel, I think I had whined to you last time about having a hard time with the double entries for everything, and you had given me a consolidated version that was helpful. And I guess my question is, and maybe you can bring that up, but my question is on health insurance and how that compares in the proposed budget to the current year's budget in relation to what the governor's office gave us for guidance on that.
Do you have a specific question about health insurance? So just
Yeah, how does our number, can you just show us, maybe share a screen and show us how the number proposed for FY 27, how that compares to the 5% increase that we were, the governor's guidance said to include in the budget?
So sure, there are 4 line items for health insurance. They are broken down by either general fund or special fund. They are also broken down by classified or exempt status. The recommendation and the instructions is that there should be a 5% increase on health insurance estimated in our budget, and adaptive planning, which is the budgeting tool, should be applying that 5% increase. And after we had talked last week, I had also spoken with our liaison, our budget liaison, Tim Medier, that adaptive planning is in fact applying that increase, and he confirmed that it was.
Alex, is that answering the question that you had?
Maybe not.
No, but I'll think on it some more. You can move along if you want, and I'll try to put a finer point on it. Sorry.
Are
That
you
wasn't
trying
clear.
to discern whether the total health insurance costs are indeed 5% of what they previously were, or
Honestly, it's pretty basic. And I'm trying to figure out what is the total health insurance increase, and what is it as a percentage of the current year's budget,
okay.
and is it 5% per the governor's thing? And so I'm getting it's not, and there's this protocol that Rachel just referred to as to why, apparently, but I'm still trying to get the number.
Okay.
I don't know if that's something you can put up on screen, Rachel, and just or maybe next time.
Can I ask an ancillary while Rachel's considering that? And that is, we have new positions, which weren't accounted for in the previous budget. So I think that the 5% increase is per, position. And when you have new positions, you're gonna end up with more than a 5% increase in your health insurance costs. Does that follow?
That makes sense to me, Janet.
Hmm.
I'm just looking for the
Yeah,
the
I think
explanation
Rachel's-
of that.
yeah, I think Rachel's
I'm
calculating.
doing some calculations
Yeah.
as we speak.
And
Um,
as you do your calculations, Brooke has her hand up, so go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, I was just questioning when you were just talking about the new employees and that we would be higher than 5%. Are you just comparing to last year's budget and now? Because weren't we in last year's budget? Like the new employees?
No,
Not all of the new employees were in last year's budget, no.
Okay,
The two limited service coordinator positions were not in the FY 26 base budget. I think that's the
Gotcha.
primary change.
gotcha. I'm sorry. That's what I was forgetting about. Thanks.
Okay, so last year, fiscal year 26, the total health insurance costs were $711,000, approximately $712,000. Currently, this fiscal year, we are at $732,000. That's not quite a 5% change. But I can follow up with Tim again about it and confirm that these are not numbers that I calculate. These are numbers that finance and management system calculates based on the positions that we code in to the system. So I can confirm with him that it's performing the calculation correctly.
Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah.
I appreciate the follow-up. Is that true of the salary line? Which line items do we really not have control over, that do we not calculate, that it just come to us? Is it health insurance, salary?
Well, I mean, control is a interesting term. I mean, anything from salaries down to, let's see. Most of this first page that you're looking at currently, with the exception of per diem and other personnel services, are calculated by finance and management's system. We provide input information into that system, position codes, classified or exempt status, for example. So control is kind of there's a different way of calculating those personnel services than the other line items in the budget, which may be based on invoices from previous years. But the human resources, input information includes things like an employee step date, and whether that falls within this fiscal year or not. It could also include, whether they're a full-time employee or whether they have an alternative work schedule and may work less than 40 hours a week. So there's lots of inputs that we need to put into calculating all of that personnel information. It's just in a slightly different way than the other line items of the budget. Does that?
Helps,
can I ask
yeah.
Okay.
an ancillary question on that, Rachel?
Sure.
If there is someone on our staff who opts not to get health insurance because they're covered in a different way, is that also automatically included
Yes.
in the calculation. Okay, thanks.
Yes,
Um,
and there are assumptions for positions that are currently vacant. You know,
okay,
finance and management makes a assumption based on, they project healthcare costs, but
yeah,
there are lots of different options. They use one set of assumptions for any vacant position. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
yeah. Kirsten, you have a question?
Yeah, so I was just kind of looking for the 10,000 foot, verification that what we're plugging into the finance and management system reflects that basically 100% of our positions would be filled with bodies. And that also one of those assumptions is like the current classification rate, right? Like positions could change over time, but it's best information currently. So is there anything sort of out of the ordinary that in terms of the positions, the planning, what this is all based on that you might share? I mean, I would envision that it's 100%, but is there
It
any
reflects all of
positions that
the,
haven't? Sorry, go ahead.
no, finish your thought, please.
Well, just are there positions that we're planning to, repurpose or, that are not plugged in at the 100% at sort of the current rate? Any anomalies you want to mention?
No, this reflects a full staff, with the exception that we have 2 potential temporary positions that would be funded through other appropriations that wouldn't be funded through the base budget. You know, for example, in your carry forward plan, you approved, the
Right.
creation of a temporary district
Right.
technician position. That's not accounted for here, just for example, but our full-time staff are included in the FY 27 estimate. The difference between fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27 is that in fiscal year 26, we only included a half year funding for our 2 district coordinator positions, the new district coordinator positions. In fiscal year 27, there's a full year of funding for 2 positions. Does that make sense? So I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest position change between those 2 fiscal years.
Thanks, Rachel.
Alex?
So yes, question about the various ways the budget gets tweaked over time and what is reflected in this budget. You just clarified, thank you, that the carry forward that we made a pitch for and were granted the ability to move FY to carry forward budget into FY 26 from FY 25, right?
5, yeah.
That's not reflected in these numbers, that exists somewhere else and it's not part of this budget. How about some of the other elements that I'm not used to? For example, the budget adjustment act that happens in the middle of the year, and the payout, which happens in the middle of a fiscal year. How are those changes to one year's budget reflected when you start work on the next year's? Is it included in the FY 26 numbers that we're seeing in the spreadsheet, or is it somewhere else?
I mean, I think it depends. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, if that's okay. We can certainly come back to it, but I think it's better for discussion. I think it depends. And I think there are certain things in a carry forward plan, you're creating your budget. When you deviate from that budget, other options avail themselves throughout the year. And whether you are overestimating expenditures or underestimating them, there are different ways to remedy that throughout a fiscal year. So you know, for example, our carry forward plan from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26. We had certain vacancy savings or other line items that weren't fully realized, that we didn't expend those funds as we thought we would in fiscal year 26. So you come upon the possibility of carrying forward that sum of money for a specific purpose at the, you know, at the approval of other divisions in the state. For example, this year, fiscal year 26, what we budget adjustment, which I provided you some line items, but there are changes to that I'd like to discuss with the board. No one could have predicted that there would be a return to work order from the executive, you know, branch or from the governor's office. And if we cannot absorb the costs to accommodate a change like that to still be in operation, then that's an opportunity to request a budget adjustment. It's expenditures that were unplanned at the time of budgeting. And those expenditures cannot be absorbed in other line items of the existing budget. So there's an opportunity if, you know, you can make your way through that decision tree, to be able to ask for that request. I don't know if I'm getting at your
No,
question,
this
Alex.
is helpful, but let me be more specific. So, and I just want to take it one at a time. So the Budget Adjustment Act, it happens every year, and you have suggestions for what we're going to request this year, but it happened last year too, right? And it was approved. And so my question is, does that budget adjustment for FY 26, which was approved last year in the middle of, sorry,
Can I try, Alex?
does the budget adjustment act, is it reflected in the budget numbers we're looking at right now for last year and what we're, you know, so that as a base for proposing going forward into next year? Does the prior budget adjustment act for that FY, the year, the last?
I hear what you're saying. Do you understand, Rachel?
I hope so. And let me take a crack.
Okay.
Yes, I think, although I don't believe that I am showing them on the line items that I
Oh.
gave to you. So typically there are two columns for any given fiscal year. There's the FY 26 budget as passed, and then there's an FY 26 governor's BAA recommend, which the difference between those two columns would be the budget adjustment that happens in that fiscal year. And you can see it reflected within the granularity of those line items. We do not have an approved FY 26 BAA recommend currently reflected in the line items, but it will show up, you know, when it is approved. Does that
Gotcha.
make sense?
That helps.
So
So how
if
about
we
how about
saw,
the
you know,
payout,
for
though?
example, if we saw like going back a year, FY 25 as passed, you know, versus the FY 25 BAA recommend, you could potentially see some differences in those line items. It's just we're too early for that
Yep.
change to be reflected at this very moment. Does
That
that
makes sense to me. I
help?
think my brain was stuck in the actuals from FY 25, and those aren't so significant at the moment. But how about the Pay Act? The Pay Act happens also in the middle of the year, and yeah, I guess is that
Pay Act is not reflected in, to my knowledge, in the difference there. I
okay?
don't
So
believe it is, but it would be reflected in the actuals, because we are requesting the Pay Act to compensate for salaries and benefits estimates that were made a year and a half before we are paying the actual salaries and benefits. At the time we are like implementing that budget. You know, when you're forecasting this, you're a year and a half ahead of the last dollar that you would pay in a budget. So
I guess what I'm trying to get my head around this. I'm not doing a very good job. The FY26 budget was originally created at this time last year. And then in the middle of the year, there were pay act changes to the FY25 budget that, and I'm trying to figure out whether those adjustments somehow get wrapped into the next fiscal year, or if it's every year you just forget about them, the errors or the changes and start fresh.
BAA is reflected, pay act is not. Carry
Okay.
forward is not. Those are one-time questions that need to be resolved, you know, within the fiscal year, but I don't believe that they are reflected in the as passed budget or the governor's BAA recommend. They may be reflected in the actuals, because what you're asking for is the ability to spend that money. We just don't have the benefit of the FY26 actuals because we're halfway through, you know, only a quarter of the way through the fiscal year. Is that?
That's super helpful.
Makes
Thank you
sense.
for helping
Okay.
me work through that. The answer, the follow-on question
Complicated.
then is, on the combined spreadsheet that you sent me for, where the double entries were sort of summed together, it looks like, classified salaries are going up 8.3%. Budget, from a budget standpoint, from 26 to 27, and exempt salaries are going up 12.2%. And so my question from my notes was like, why so much? And you explained why so much on the classified side because of the difference with how the roving district coordinators were budgeted for only a half year and as opposed to a full year. But I assume that makes up the bulk of the increase in salaries above, you know, anticipated step increases and the like. But on the exempt side, I'm confused about why it's going up so much. Is there a reason for that?
Cost of living adjustments are also included in that, as well as increases in pay. And that could be through raises. It could be through, on the classified side, step increases, for example. It could also be through changes in positions. You know, we had to make some assumptions for the board members last year about how much you were actually being paid before that was enumerated in statute. So I think some of the difference here is that we know a lot more than we did last year about all of our staff, you know, all of our new staff members. We had to make some assumptions in fiscal year 26. And I think those assumptions are becoming more solidified this year. Does that help as a?
Yeah, I look at the numbers and I see the governor's guidance and I say, we're going to have to make a case for this. We're well outside of the guidance. And the case that we make for the classified positions, I think, is an easier one because it was an apples to oranges comparison. And with the exempt one, it's harder to make that case except the way you just did, which is that, you know, things were underestimated, you know, and we have better numbers now.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were in recruitment last year at this time, and there was very little known about how these 5 new board members were, you know, going to be absorbed into our organization. So I think some of it is related to that. I think overall, though, the guidance that is most important out of this budget is, and the instructions from the governor's office is a 3% increase in general fund support overall. And we are currently modeling
3.2.
a 6.8% general fund increase. That said, without the additional salaries from the 2 limited service coordinator positions that were converted to full-time classified positions, we'd be at a 3.2 general fund percent increase from last year. And I think that is a very reasonable ask, considering all of the change that we've gone through in the last year. And if, the next step from submitting this budget on October 14th is to go to the governor's office and have a conversation, about our line items and get into the details about it. If they want us to revise it, we can. I wouldn't necessarily, I think that this is a good starting place, however, to start that conversation. But it's up to you. It's your budget. You can tell me to change it in whatever way you want me to change it.
Sarah,
Are you looking for action from us today in terms of approving this?
I think it would be helpful. Well, I mean, I'm happy to follow up on the healthcare question that Alex brought up earlier in this conversation. If really what I'm hoping for today is, are there any changes to this that you are looking for me to make? And if there are, then I'm happy to present those changes at our meeting on Thursday.
It's Thursday that you need it sort of approved by, right, Rachel?
Yeah, that would be best. Yes.
I have a bunch of other line items, but I don't want to dominate the questions. So if others want to go down the list and ask questions, feel free.
Sarah,
Well, the thing that I'd like to sort of throw out there too is Rachel did volunteer to meet with all of us individually to help us sort of walk through some of this, because I think as one of the board members that had the privilege of sort of sitting on the budget building, I think some of these might be best answered offline. And if there's like larger issues in terms of increases or decreases overall, I think the one thing that I would like to state is I think this is a bare bones budget as we can get. I think that we had a lot of very fiscal conservatism with this in terms of this is what we need, recognizing that we have had these ads that weren't accounted for in the previous year that makes this year then in terms of a percentage increase a little bit more. I think the only things that we as a board can really do is try and cut some areas, which I think would be unwise, or add to it, which I also think would be unwise. So there's not a whole lot of wiggle room here, and just would say that would probably be the best conversation for us to have is around that and the specific questions. I think if those could be taken offline between now and Thursday might serve us best.
With
Alex, are
respect,
any-
Sarah, I disagree. I feel like this is the first time our board has reviewed the budget for this organization, and I think all the questions are hopefully helpful to all the board members. But I don't want to take up all the space. So Janet, you're in charge of running the meeting and the agenda. If we're running out of time,
no, we're not running out of time. So I think we have time to address Alex's further questions. It doesn't look like others are dying to, whoops, just got a hand raised. So, Kirsten, what's your question?
Well, yeah, my question before hearing, Sarah's remarks was going to be for you, Janet, and Sarah, as the 2 board members who worked on this, as I understand it, with Rachel. Is there anything, so thank you, Sarah, for sharing those thoughts as far as, your observation that this is, fiscally conservative. But Janet, is there anything that you would point out here in the budget that's been put
No, I
forward?
would
I mean, as far
concur.
as the,
I
yeah.
would concur with what Sarah said. We tried to be conservative so that, we don't want to over or underestimate things. We and we did, we made some modest increases, a couple of modest increases, one for staff, actually around staff, training, I think was one, and, maybe bonuses was the other. They're fairly modest, but other than that, this reflects a very conservative take on bringing our program forward.
Well, I
Do
would
you
welcome
have-
if,
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Kirsten.
I was just gonna say, I would welcome if Rachel wants to give us the walkthrough of, I mean, we talked about most of the items on the first page, but we, if we have time today and Rachel could continue to give us that overview, I would appreciate that.
Okay.
I'm happy to also have an offline conversation with Rachel, but I do feel like it's more efficient for Rachel to just give us all that information together.
Sure. Brooke, I just want to ask you if you have any particular issues or questions or concerns about the budget? No.
No. I'm
Okay,
good.
so Alex, do you want to ask your particular line item questions?
I'll skip the first page as Rachel did a good job explaining that we provide information and other folks provide the numbers based on that. So if we skip to the other personal services line item, that's a big change. Can you just tell me what that is?
Sorry.
The consolidated version without the duplicates that you provided me, Rachel, makes it look like that line item was 150,000 in FY26 and is only 5,000 in FY27.
So the difference there, that is the half year of funding for the two coordinator positions. In FY26, it ended up as other personnel services. Why? Because it was very late in the FY26 budget season when we got approved to convert those two limited service positions to full-time. So now that they are full-time classified, they move from that other personnel services up into classified salaries. Does that make sense, Alex?
Sure does.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. The next item was, and as you can tell, I'm just
Sure.
keying
That's
on
fine.
items that look like there was substantial change. That's the way I've always looked at budgets. So,
Sure.
it's not that these items are particularly important to me. They just jump off the Excel spreadsheet. There's an item for rent, land, and buildings office space going from about 16,000 to 31,000.
Yep.
Is that our return to office or not? Because that's in our Budget Adjustment Act for this year.
So in part, I think that line item specifically pays for our Rutland rent. And in FY25, well, we budgeted for it to be $16,000 in FY26 because that was the estimate at the time. In reality, in fiscal year 25, we were charged over $20,000 for that space. And we're also proposing to, at least for a year, to change our lease space in Rutland to better accommodate all the staff in that building for return to work. So, we'd be forfeiting some of our space and gaining space in a different portion of the suite that we already work in the Asa Bloomer building in Rutland. But I think it's a more realistic version of that line item. Prior to FY25, we actually we rented that space from A&R and they departed. Why is the discrepancy from 16,000 to 20,000, you ask? Well, we were paying A&R a sublet for the space that we occupied, but they have since moved out of the Asa Bloomer building. So now we are contracting with BGS, and the way that BGS calculates our rental costs is fundamentally different from the way that A&R did. So that is the genesis of that change. I
Rachel,
think
isn't there also some change? Is that a different line item for Essex? And because A&R has
It
given
is.
us an indication now that our costs for Essex will increase and that we can expect an even greater increase in fiscal year 28. Is that the
Yes.
same line item?
different.
Okay.
That's actually in A&R O&M charges, operations and maintenance charges. It's on
Yeah.
page 3 of the PDF.
Yeah.
You can see that our actuals in fiscal year 25 were around 37,000. And we're budgeting for $64,000, just over that in fiscal year 27. The difference there, several things come out of that line item, but two of the most important things are our rent for our Essex office and rent for our St. Johnsbury office. And there's currently a capital needs assessment happening for Essex. A&R is estimating that they are going to be charging us more rent, in fiscal year 27 than what we had been previously paying. In addition to that, if we wanted additional space, we need additional room in that line item of the budget to make that return to work happen. So those two line items together are really talking mostly about our space, if that makes sense.
Brooke,
So does this budget account for additional space that we need to return to work in Essex or not?
It can, yeah. I mean, we're budgeting more than what we think we would need to pay. So there's room if A&R is willing to give us the space.
Any
Does
idea
that
when we
make
will
sense?
know that? Because we kind of need to know that, don't we?
That's the
we
trick,
might-
right?
we might know by December 1st.
Yeah, that's the trick, Brooke. That's the trick.
Well, let's hope that the governor's office holds everybody a little bit harmless who are in these situations where they don't know yet what they're going to be charged interagency for space in these state office buildings that are suddenly going to be full of people again.
Or if there is space.
Right. So Rachel, my
Plenty of
next
space
one,
here in Rutland. Come on down.
yeah, well, and apparently they charge a lot there. So yeah, more agencies.
They charge a lot everywhere.
Rachel, the next line item was on the ADS service level agreement and ADS end user computing.
Yep.
Both of those have substantial increases of, my calculations were 21% increase on the ADS service level agreement, 10% on the end user. And I think the governor's memo said anticipate this, a much smaller amount for that. So I just wanted to ask why they were going up so much.
Sure. I think good question. There are certain things that we did not budget for in fiscal year 26, including licenses for software application support for all of our new staff members. So 2 limited service coordinator positions, temporary positions, the board members, our new attorney position. A lot of it comes from software licensure. GIS licenses are included in that too. In addition to that, we also needed, over the last couple months, we filled out several IT ABC forms with IT to scope out some of the work associated with our temporary mapping systems for tier 3 and criterion 8C. We also spec'd out costs associated with our regional plan map viewer, like to view future land use maps in an interactive map viewer. And we've also created a new database to accept all the board applications for regional planning commissions, tier 1A, tier 1B. In those IT ABC forms, you will see that there are initial build costs, so costs that may be billed in the first year, but then there are ongoing maintenance costs to support that infrastructure going forward into the future. We included that support into the future category in that line item. And I think that we have a reasonable justification to kind of deviate in this from the instructions, because we are doing a lot of new work this year. And we're generally staying within the 3% general fund increase, with the exception of those two new positions that we added. So I think that's the genesis of that change.
Okay, cool. The only other one I had a question about was a pretty small potato one, so it's not that important, but advertising other was going up a large percentage, but it starts with a small number, so it's not a lot of money, but I was just curious why.
I think that is mostly for the board application processes, and if we have to advertise our meetings, or even if we have to, advertise our meetings, I think that they can be a couple $100 every time you
Right.
need to advertise something in a newspaper. And I think that is going to be a result of some of these new application processes that we take on that responsibility in some cases.
Yeah, we have to provide hearing notices for the plan reviews, the tier 1A hearings. So, yeah.
We do that. I thought the municipalities were on the hook and the RPCs were on the hook to post those required legal notices.
They are, but we have to post a hearing notice.
In a
We
newspaper
pay
of
for the
record,
hearing
or?
notice. Yeah,
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
yeah.
That's all I had, Rachel. If you want to talk about other stuff more generally for Kirsten's benefit, I will be quiet.
No, thank you for the questions. I think it's helpful to, get into that level of granularity. I think, Alex, you keyed in on like the main areas of change. And I don't know, Kirsten, if there was something specific you wanted to go through in these line items. I'm going to just share my screen again to show what was included on the website, but just as a reminder, all expenditures are in couplets. So for salaries for classified employees, there's a portion that is directed to Fund 10,000, which is the general fund, and then Fund 21260, which is the Act 250 permit fund. So every ledger account you will see in a couplet. And then there are different line items that you can bill to, generally broken up into personnel services or operational expenses, and then further broken down into account code. So for example, for personnel services, salaries, overtime, health insurance are all their own specific account code. In the columns of the table, there are actual costs for fiscal year 25. Just remind folks that was really the Natural Resources Board, and we've changed operationally pretty significantly since those actuals have come in. There is the as passed fiscal year 26 budget, and then the yet to be updated FY26 BAA recommend budget. And then what we are proposing currently, FY 27 governor's recommended budget. There are, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to get into all of this, but it's as minute as, how much we pay for disposal and postage every year, and as maximal as our, rental costs or, personnel costs. I will just say that, like, as a ratio, we generally, 90% of our costs are related to personnel expenses. 10% is really operational in nature. So, I don't think that we're the only organization that has that kind of ratio. But it's significant, on the personnel side of things. So happy to entertain any other questions. I do want to touch on the budget adjustment line
Let's-
items, but go ahead, Kirsten.
Well,
Yes, I
hold
just
on a
want-
sec, Kirsten. Just because we are, I'm sorry, I kind of lost track of time there. We are coming, oh, no, we're not. We're okay. So go ahead,
Okay.
Kirsten.
Okay, so the A&R O&M charges,
Mhm.
and maybe this is a lease term question, but are we paying to use the office equipment that is shared at our different regional office locations as part of that fee? I would presume that we are. And I'm wondering if it includes costs attributable to all of that kind of equipment at the locations that we share alongside A&R. And I'm thinking in particular, for example, of like large format scanner, large format printer, that kind of equipment. Like, how does that fit into our lease agreements
Sure.
and the cost we're paying?
So A&R O&M charges include only a subset of our offices. So Springfield, St. Johnsbury, and Essex are included in the charges. A&R bills us as a head count, like quote unquote head count. So we're a proportional cost of the overall operating expenses for that office. We pay our proportionate cost based on head count. So it does include, shared print, copy, scan equipment, but it may not. But some of our offices, we have to contract for those services on our own, where we don't share with another agency.
Okay.
Does that
thank
answer
you.
your question? Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Let's let Rachel move on to the budget adjustment.
Okay. So I do have some changes from the FY 26 budget adjustment. I think this is my recommendation. You could choose to accept it or not. That I believe that we need to request additional money to accurately implement the governor's return to office executive order. What I'm modeling here is the cost for new equipment, really furniture and fixtures to accommodate our staff statewide, as well as another line item, fee for space services, which is basically moving out of old equipment and moving in of new equipment across several offices statewide. I will just say that based on some conversations that I've had in the last week since this was submitted, I think the total amount should be increased to make everybody's requested accommodations happen. So instead of $32,725. I think it would be more accurate to request $38,325, really increasing the office equipment line item only in this scenario. This does not include equipment for computers or any hardware accessories. It is really limited to furniture and fixtures. So I think I'll stop sharing now because I think get the gist of the line items. Go ahead, Brooke.
How many of the office furniture that is being ordered? I was looking at the floor plan for Montpelier versus what's in the offices, and when you're saying you're going to remove a desk and then put a new desk in there, I mean, how many total desks and how many total chairs are we ordering? Not with regard to hotel or, you know, the first floor stations, because it seems like we have most of the furniture we need. Maybe we need 3 or 4 desks and maybe 6 chairs, but we're not like spending away all our furniture and ordering new, right? Or reusing what we can and repurposing it or keeping it in the office that it's in or swapping it.
So I think
I'm-
part of what we're doing, Brooke, is trying to make sure that if people are going to be working in the office 3 days a week, that they have an adequate ergonomical, setup that, we're not like, if you consider the office that I'm currently in, the chairs here, they're just not comfortable. They're just not, they're going to result in a lot of pain, at least in my, from my perspective, to try to use them. And so I think we're looking at updating office equipment in conjunction with this return to office. Sarah?
Let me just respond.
Sure.
I appreciate that, but for example, you look on the map and it says in Pete's current office, we're going to get rid of the desk, and in his new office, we're going to put a new desk. And I want to make sure that we are retaining whatever
What we can
equipment
use.
is appropriate and ergonomically correct and all of that. I don't want to be wasteful. That's my only point.
Thanks. Sarah?
I was just going to echo that. I think there are some logistical challenges, particularly in 10 Baldwin, in terms of space and room space. And particularly if we're getting into an office sharing scenario where there might be one desk in there, but it's not appropriate to have 2 people sitting at one desk and the one desk takes up the majority of the space. That to be a little bit more flexible and nimble, to acquire a couple of desks to try and best use our space. And also be cognizant of the fact that if we were taking a desk, and I think I had ultimately, I was saying, hey, I'll take a leftover desk from somewhere. I don't need one. But when you take a look at the cost in terms of trying to like move a desk from Montpelier to Essex or something like that, it's just not worth it in terms of overall. There's no cost savings. It might actually cost you more. So I think knowing some of the ins and outs and where Rachel went with this, I feel confident that we are being as thrifty as possible and we're not. We're recycling, we're using, but at the same time, just given the logistical challenges that we have of being so spread out and also the spaces that we're working in, is that we need to plan some budgetary item. And I think this fell on like the smaller side of things in terms of it is just for moving some of the furniture, a few ads, but this I also felt was a fairly fiscally conservative proposal. Thank
And
you.
Rachel, is that true that, let's just a hypothetical example, the desk that is in Pete's office above where Kirsten and Pete are sitting currently, if that were to be moved to Rutland, for instance, because it could be accommodated here but not there, is that the expense and the sort of logistics around getting that down here aren't worth the effort? Is that,
It's more expensive than buying a new
yeah,
piece of equipment.
okay.
Yeah,
Alex,
Janet, I was like just looking at Montpelier. You know, it's
Yeah.
like if our two enforcement officers are sharing a room and they already have desks, is there something wrong with those desks that we need to move them out and give them new desks? That's all that I was trying to figure out, not like sending them around the state and
no, but
that
I
kind
was
of thing.
I just wanted confirmation that that was
Right.
true.
I
Um,
gotcha. Yeah.
Alex,
Rachel, remind me, the budget adjustment spreadsheet has two line items. It's the office equipment and the fee for space services. The fee for space services is again what?
Moving, hiring contractors to move our equipment, literally to make space in our
Okay.
offices.
So it doesn't reflect potential increased cost of getting more space at the Essex office or at another state office building that we're leasing from today.
That's not the intent, no, of that line item. It's for one-time costs to hire somebody to move equipment out of our space or move it around our space, as Brooke, um, as Brooke was saying, maybe something isn't used in the upstairs floor, but we certainly should
Right.
not be having our employees move it and be getting hurt, to have it be in the appropriate spot and location in our building.
Should there be a line item for, in the budget adjustment request for increased cost of space, leased space?
So we are actually billed a year later for all of our lease space costs.
Okay,
So we're building that into the fiscal year 27
27,
budget, like we
got
just talked about. So,
Yep.
I
Okay.
think there's some room in fiscal year 27 to make some decisions, between then and now. Does that make sense?
yeah, that makes sense. My last question was, I think we touched on this, or you did last time. This seems totally appropriate to me to request, a budget adjustment based on this return to office, policy. And I'd be surprised if other agencies weren't doing the same thing as a part of their budget adjustment act or budget adjustment request. But I think you had mentioned that we do anticipate some vacancy savings, and like technically we don't need to ask for this. We could just, absorb it from those vacancy savings. And so while I think this is a very appropriate reason to ask for it, I'm curious to your perspective about like whether it's better to make the request or in order to be on the record that like this is an added cost to our organization, or if it would be better to absorb it and so just explain that in some narrative fashion without asking for any budget adjustment.
I think that's to the board to discuss. This is just what I think it will cost. So I think, that's for all of you to tell me how you want to move forward on this.
yeah, thanks, Rachel. Kirsten, is that your hand up?
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same question as Alex. And I'm all for addressing, employee ergonomics, if people need new or different chairs, or if there's a specific request for a stand-up desk, that's great. I'm not excited to do office equipment upgrades for locations where we still don't have the administration's guidance concerning employees with long commutes. Like I don't want to pull the trigger on those expenditures yet, but that's just sort of another topic. But When I'm here in Montpelier, I took a quick look around. I mean, there are some of these desks are these beautiful maple desks, and I hope that we have an opportunity to, just maybe look hard at what can fit where in terms of the individual offices and repurpose everything that we can that still meets employee ergonomic needs. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Any, Sarah?
So I think that to answer Alex's question for I think the policy stuff that we should be discussing is absolutely, I think we should make the request because we are going to, I think there's so many other variables that we have to contend with that we're in the process of trying to hire another employee. There are some other things that we just don't know. And so I think let's make the request. I think there's no harm in asking for assistance with this because we figured out other ways to make things work. And I think this is sort of the middle of the road approach that will make every space work for somebody. I think to Kirsten's point, we're not being, I don't see that any of this being proposal being like specific and accommodating specific individuals. I think this is more sort of generally to make these office facilities work with the amount of people that we're going to be putting into them. These are some of the basic requests to make that happen. So I have no trouble feeling comfortable making this request and think that we perhaps should do that because this is one area that we can request assistance for, and there are other areas that we won't be able to.
Also, if we end up not using all of it, so be it. So it's a conservative approach to look at, realistically, what might this cost and ask for it, and not necessarily rely on vacancy savings. There might be a need for that vacancy savings for something else, or there might not be. So we may be, doing another carry forward in a year to account for that. Any other budget discussion for now?
I'll just say that I'll revise the draft budget adjustment lines, and I'm happy to follow up about the healthcare costs. And I'll try and do that before our next meeting on Thursday.
Okay,
But
great.
Rachel?
any of the board members that have other questions, I'm around this week and happy to talk through anything specific if something arises after this meeting.
My only follow-up question was, when you were getting me straight about which aspects of how we tweak the budget during the year, sort of move forward into budget conversations the next year. Oh, I hope I remember this right. Budget adjustments do, right? They get reflected in the next year when you start doing budgeting, because it is a change to the budget. And so if this budget adjustment were approved, it would be folded into our FY26, budget. And it reflects one-time spending, right? So it's just, I'm sorry, I'm still having an awkward time like thinking about comparing apples to apples, one budget to the next over a period of years. Maybe there just are no apples to compare to each other because all these budgets change so much from one year to the middle of the year to the end of the year. But do you know what I'm saying, Rachel? Like this is going to change our FY26 budget. And yet these are one-time expenses that will not repeat in future fiscal years.
I can
Yep.
see clarity on it.
Oh, I'm not asking you to change anything. I'm just trying to have you help me understand.
Yeah.
And we can talk more offline.
I mean, I think every year's budget has one-time expenses, and not necessarily every year, but it's something that happens from time to time, especially with new programming, such as what we've just been implementing in the last year. So can I just express gratitude for Rachel's brain? And that it's not me that has to keep track of all of these couplets and different budget permeations and whatnot. Thank you, Rachel, for keeping it all in your brain and explaining it to us upon request.
Yes, much
Thanks, Rachel.
appreciation, Rachel, both for your brain and the fact that that's your job and you're doing it well. And I appreciate you helping the rest of us understand that. I
Thank you,
will say just
Rachel.
at the end, I'm a little worried about the fact that our budget is so much more when the governor's office gave us this, guideline for not having it be more and seemed to be saying things like, if you got to cut somewhere else, you got to do that in order to get to these overall numbers. But I don't see any other way. I don't see anything to cut, and I don't see any other way to approach it other than what we've discussed, which is, reflective of the fact that the program has expanded and there's been some true up. There is some true up that's happening in this fiscal year 27, but I'm still a little uncomfortable. So I guess it'll be interesting to hear what the governor's office has to say when whoever on our team actually sits down with their representatives and talks about it. Presumably that's Janet and Rachel. Good luck.
Thank you, Alex. Any more discussion on budget for today? Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Let's move on to proposed legislative changes. So Pete provided last week a list of proposed legislative changes that has not yet been discussed by the board. And the board today hopefully will have a discussion to start to prioritize that list or even, eliminate certain things from that list as far as what the board decides is what we should be pursuing with the legislature. We also talked about, things that should be pursued now versus in a future legislative session. So that can, that kind of time frame can also be part of what we discussed today. Pete, do you want to share your spreadsheet and perhaps we can.
I wouldn't mind if somebody else has it up, if they share it, and then I can keep the notes with the working draft open, if you don't mind. So
See
thank you
if I
for
can.
teeing
I'll
that
look.
up.
I have
Let
it
me-
up.
Oh, you do?
I
Okay.
can try it.
Do you want to share? Thanks, Brooke.
Thank you, Brooke.
Just make sure I'm picking the right one.
Looks
see
like the
that
right
in
one to
here.
me.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think again, just priorities here is trying to determine which items you all want to move forward. And I think in this meeting and next meeting, if we can get through this list, we don't necessarily need to go line by line if we can do it in a broader sense, but I'm happy to go line by line as well and kind of walk through it and figure out which ones are the priorities for this particular legislative session.
So
So
I
we
don't
have-
know.
yeah.
I don't know. I can't think of a better way to do it than line by line at this point, unless somebody else has a recommendation in that regard. But Brooke.
I don't have a recommendation in that regard, but one of the things that I just want to say up front is that I think the most beneficial suggestions to the legislature, once we decide on the universe of what we're going to provide, providing actual statutory language is really important, not just saying, oh, we think this should be changed and give us more flexibility or, whatever. That is so critically important because if we want this work done and these things modified, we have to do the legwork on it. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brooke. And for some of these that were on my separate list, I have some proposed language, and some of these I think Pete has some proposed language with. Go ahead, Sarah.
So I think it might be helpful for us to try and figure out the sphere of what we're going to do in terms of prioritization. I think some of these are more long-term versus immediate. And then I think even within the immediate, some are a higher priority versus a lower priority.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we can do sort of a dual sort where it's long range,
Yeah,
short
think we
term,
can.
and then, okay, fantastic.
I think we can. I'm willing to start on the OML, the open meeting law one, and my feeling is that we tried that last year. We put a lot of effort into that. We didn't get anywhere, and I'm not interested in prioritizing it this second round of the biennium. Any thoughts on that one?
Agreed.
Agreed. I would go further. I would say I'm not interested in pursuing this at all, ever. I think it can come off of our list at this point.
Sarah?
So I'm going to propose that we don't take anything off the list right now. I think it's a good list that Pete put a lot of effort into identifying. But I think that some of these things could go long-term versus short-term, and they don't necessarily get shown or shared beyond the board. They're more sort of internal working for right now, but I think that could be something that's long-term, that's not a high priority.
Yeah, I think it can go on a not actively pursuing page.
Yeah, as I
Kirsten, do
see
you?
it, there's a, do we want to pursue it this session? If not, do we want to pursue it in a future session? And then a third category is we may or may not ever pursue it. And I would
Right.
propose the open meeting law be in that third category.
So would I. Kirsten?
I'm fine with not pursuing item 1 this session.
Okay, let's move on to 2. I don't really understand the importance of this one. That may be something, I don't know if Jenny, you want to weigh in, or Pete, but seems like we've been operating with authority, and I don't know that I should be worried about whether we can continue to operate with authority in this regard. Jenny, do you have a?
I think before I think this has become less of a risk as time has passed and things. So I'm not sure I would prioritize this one. At the time that Act 181 came out and we saw this as a gap in the statute, there was a concern, but people,
Yeah.
like you said, seem to understand that we have succeeded the Natural Resources Board.
Yeah, do board members have comments on this one? Sarah?
A lot of these that we're going to look at today are in the realm of technical fixes that sort of go into that same sort of we're operating without them, but it would sure be great at some point to get the technical corrections. And so what I'd say is, could we develop a specific doc where all the technical corrections go into? And it's maybe not our highest priority, but it's there that we can offer at some point, maybe even for this legislative session.
So are you thinking that this is an important technical correction?
I'm saying that
thinking
we have a
it's
whole
not.
bunch of technical corrections that perhaps could
Right.
all get grouped together.
Right, but for this one, I'm not even sure what the fix is. Brooke?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not. I know that there are a lot of places where Natural Resources Board was not replaced with Land Use Review Board, including one example where it's changed in one part of a sentence and not in the other part of the
Yeah.
sentence. But this I'm not getting. I'm not understanding what else needs to happen in statute to place us in the shoes of the NRB. And if there's a specific statutory section or something that needs to be amended, I'm happy to look at it, but I'm not sure I
Yeah.
see anything here.
Why don't we put this in the category of, we'll look into it later if it's still needed. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to
Yeah.
3.
Number 3, I think we should do. That's a technical change and we ought to fix that.
Yep.
That should be an easy one.
Yeah. And number 4, or Kirsten.
Yeah, I agree with number 3, technical correction, simple, straightforward. We should.
Yep.
Pursue it. And I agree with what Sarah said, to the extent there's kind of a grouping of obviously technical corrections, then we should just do all that cleanup at once.
So this is, this one's priority.
Number 3.
For
Yeah.
this biennium. 4.
I
Yeah, and what
really
I'm
would
gonna
like
do
to
is
see this,
just,
but I think number 4 is a future item, not a this year item.
What were
What
you
I'm gonna
saying,
do
Pete?
here- Yeah, sorry to jump in. What I'm gonna do here is, I'm just cataloging, what I'm hearing, and if there aren't any objections and you guys kind of start moving on, I'm gonna, take that as, consent by everyone, with that proposed direction, just to keep moving along.
Yeah, thanks. Is
Okay.
somebody saying something?
Uh,
Kirsten?
I think it'd be really great if we can efficiently kind of just be careful with how we're advancing through the items as we've been doing. Just make sure, just responding a little bit to what Pete just said.
So we're ready to
Making
move
sure
on to
Pete has-
item 4?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Alex suggested this for a later time. Anybody else have specific comment on this one?
Yes.
Kirsten?
This is a significant policy question, and I don't think it fits a technical correction. And I think it's something that we can put it, keep it on the list along with everything else and talk about it more later, but I don't see it as an immediate item that we should take up.
Okay, that's 2 going that direction. Brooke and Sarah, you feel
Agreed.
similarly? Nods. Okay, let's move on. Number 5. I think we should not pursue this at this time. There's
Agreed.
too much change happening. We don't need to do this now. I would put that on the final page.
I agree.
Kirsten? Brooke?
When Annette, the other day talked about the Public Service Board and the Public Service Department, and then they changed it. It was really confusing, still is today. I am a strong advocate for status quo. Leave it alone. People know what it is.
Okay.
I think it should be off the list.
Oh, okay. Sarah, do you have an opinion?
I'm fine taking
I'm-
it off the list or putting it on the long range.
Yeah. I mean, I think the long range is we'll figure it out later whether we even want to pursue it. So, I don't know where it came from. So,
Not go
you know,
there. Let's go to the next one.
yeah. Let's do, I'm okay with this one.
You're okay with it being something we pursue this session?
Maybe, it's not one of my top priorities. But Makes
I think
sense.
I think it's semantics and I don't think it's worth pursuing.
Okay,
I agree with Alex.
Okay.
That's way beyond the minutia that we need to be managing in it, and it's not even an untrue statement.
okay.
Like, why do you believe that you qualify? Tell us.
Yeah. Kirsten?
I agree.
Okay, let's move on. Application. Okay, so this is, I think we should defer this one. And because it's complicated, and I would like Rachel to be able to explain it to us. As to whether it should be a priority, I'm not sure, or I don't know if we need to defer it. What, Rachel, are you prepared to sort of set the stage for this one?
I can give some background if that's helpful, but
Yeah.
Sarah has her hand up, so. Okay. Currently, we've been looking at ways to simplify our application process over time. Our fee schedule is very complicated and it leads many applicants to fill out the incorrect application form or result in an incorrect application fee, which can cause a lot of unnecessary conflict, in the application process. What I am proposing here would not have a significant impact on our revenue year to year, but it would have a very significant benefit in our operations for being able to consolidate our application fees and simplify that process for applicants who apply and our district commissions to administer. So that's number 7 on the list. Specifically, I advocate for having only one base application fee. Currently, we have 2, $187.50 or $62.50. If we streamlined it to $62.50, we would only lose something, less than $5,000 of fee revenue a year. Really, it's more accurately just over $1,000 to $2,000 of fee revenue a year, but it would simplify our operational process for administering and tracking this information, for example. Also, we currently have a master plan fee line item that is very rarely used, and looking back through 5 years of data, I believe we only used it a handful of times and it resulted in a small amount of fee revenue. I think it's much more accurate to have an applicant assess costs on what they plan to construct rather than, planning for these master plan costs. It doesn't yield a lot of fee revenue for us, and it's complicated for an applicant to kind of fill out that information in a Schedule A. That's just my experience being a coordinator in the past and hearing from our district staff and having to administer that information. So I'm happy
And-
to explain other things, but whether you want to take it up this year or not, I think it's up to you, but I would seriously consider taking this up eventually because it will simplify
Right.
our
And
online application system.
And insofar as it simplifies our application system and prevents confusion among applicants and others, it is in line with the governor's executive order, I think, and other, gubernatorial priorities for this program, I think. So it, it might be worth prioritizing this for that reason.
I think the
I don't
other
know.
piece that I wanted to just touch on in number 7 is that the Agency of Natural Resources, receives a portion of fee revenue for applications that they, I believe the terminology in statute is applications that they review. And so historically, we've interpreted that as they don't review administrative amendment applications and so are not due a fee on administrative amendment applications, but they are due a fee on minor amendments and major amendment applications. For example, you would not believe how many people answer questions, preface questions incorrectly or fill out the wrong form. And I think that it may be reasonable to streamline that and have a fee due to A&R for all application types. Kirsten may be able to weigh in on this, or Pete more accurately, but there are certainly administrative amendment applications where somebody has talked to the agency of someone from the Agency of Natural Resources, to work out a small issue on a project, and they do review the application. We just don't have a public notice period that notices them of that application specifically.
So.
Yeah, on that
here-
particular aspect, I think we could change our interpretation to address that. But if you're wanting to make the changes generally on this, then you might as well wrap in that change, would be my suggestion.
Okay. The other thing
So-
about this biennium is that we don't know whether the legislature will open Title 10 up for anything. So what we might say is, should you open Title 10 up for any changes, we are recommending this one. I don't know that this should be something that we prioritize for the second half of the biennium. Brooke.
I was trying to go after Kirsten. Anyway,
Oh, Kirsten.
I was just curious what she had to say before I
okay.
spoke. Go ahead, Kirsten, if you don't mind.
I think that if we have a flat, if we propose to the legislature to include sort of a flat rate A&R fee, there may be some applicants whose applications don't implicate an A&R review component who may find that objectionable. So I just want to tread carefully with respect to that detail. I appreciate what Rachel is suggesting for different streamlining, and certainly, anything we can do to reduce complexity. But I wonder where we are with, my understanding is that on a certain interval of time, the legislature, assesses our fees, looks at the fees with us. And I'm wondering where we are with respect to that interval.
Good
Like,
point.
when are we otherwise going to be in front of the legislature concerning our fees? Because to me, that would probably be good time to incorporate these details.
Yeah.
If that's coming up in the reasonable, is it every fourth year? And sorry, I'm not
Yeah.
versed in that off the top of my head, but
It's
Yeah,
not this year. I think
Yeah.
the last fee study we did, I believe, was in 2023, but let me take a look really quick.
So it's also something, I think that's a good point, Kirsten, and it's also something that could be part of our report to the legislature in 2027. So, Brooke.
Yeah, streamlining sounds great. My question is more along the lines of cost to benefit analysis. How, because it seems like anything that needs to be changed has all of this stuff that needs to be done. And so I'm just wondering, to redo application, fee schedules and the applications themselves, and getting the right document with the right application. How much resource is going to be required, and is it worth it? That's my only question. And I think it's a great idea, but at what cost?
Mind if I
Alex?
answer?
Oh,
Okay.
so go ahead, Rachel.
So the last fee study, Kirsten, was in 2023. We are not part of the fee study this year. So it may be next year or the year after that were included in the fee study. I would guess that it's on it wouldn't be next year, it would be the year after. To Brooke's point, I think that what we could do is honestly just delete applications from our online application portal. We could streamline them into one or two applications where currently we have 4. So, and the only reason why we have 4 is the fee schedule and certain required fields being implicated for certain types of applications is the other reason why we have 4 different application types. But we could certainly just delete application types and use existing application types more widely. So I don't think that there's a lot of overhead costs to implementing the
Change.
implementing what I'm
Yeah.
putting forward.
And
Thank
the
you.
long-term benefit is that when we do make changes, it will be much more efficient of a process than currently.
Great, thank you so much for that. And I guess my only
Alex?
issue
Oh,
is
sorry.
one of timing, and I think that if they do this review of fees periodically, that given that we have so many other things, I think it would be really good to approach it at that point.
Yeah,
When that's exactly what they're gonna look at.
yeah. Alex?
I agree with Brooke. That was what I was going to say. And also that when we get to that point, I want to have a conversation about where the appropriate place for fees to be. In statute versus in another place, but that's a different
Okay.
question.
Yeah. Good point, Alex. Pete can make a note of it. Sarah?
So I think that we should ask for this, both of the fee changes, because I think that these are things that they might not happen this year, but we will have an opportunity. There's no sense in us not putting this forward. I think per the governor's executive order that there is the request to start looking at these things. I think this shows that we are looking at these things. And I'd rather have control over and come up with a plan for how we're proactively looking at things and have something to offer people rather than somebody else that isn't as much in the weeds offer something to us. So I don't think there's any harm in some of these. I'm taking a look at the rest of the list on here in terms of staffing. And again, these might not be very high priority items, but they fall within the technical corrections. Why not just have a list of some of these fees, some of these staffing things that we just offer and say, recognizing that these aren't very high, they might want to wait a little bit, but these are things that we would very much appreciate getting straightened out. And I think that this one could save our staff time and effort. It could save applicants time and effort. So why not ask for it? And at least it's out there for when something does move, the Title 10 or the fees.
Sarah, are you suggesting that this should be a priority fix for this biennium?
So I'm suggesting that, again, goes to my original question, say there are short, medium, and long term, and then there's also within that high and low priorities. And I'd say these are all maybe shorter term technical corrections, and they aren't necessarily a high priority. They're more to medium to low, but they are a priority more in the near term versus the long term.
So you're talking about these. I thought we were just talking about number 7. And I don't see
I
that
was
as a
trying to lump-
technical fix. I see that as a different approach to our fee schedule. And I sort of feel like it should be on page 2, not the technical fixes for this biennium. What did you just say,
What's-
Sarah?
I think if it's something that can make life easier for our staff and for applicants, it might want to be not necessarily a high priority, but it might be something that we at least make the request for this biennium.
I'm not sure that the other four are there with you. It sounds like, if I'm interpreting what everybody said, it sounds like people are suggesting that we put this one into the fee schedule, sort of revisitation schedule that already happens. Is that right? I see some nods. I can't really see Kirsten because it's tiny, but that's where I am. Kirsten?
Yeah, I lean that way, but I'm not stuck on it. I mean, if it can be considered a technical correction, I do think the master plan fee detail may raise some questions at the legislature too, because I think there is recognition that it's a small fee to get this comprehensive review, and it's something that we promote. We encourage phased planning of bigger projects, and so I can see that becoming more of a legislative discussion than maybe we would envision with something that we are trying to fit into a more technical box. But I could sort of go either way, but I lean towards just doing it at the time the fees are looked at.
Okay. I think we
Yeah,
have
I definitely.
a quorum
Oh,
that
just gonna
says
say,
put
look
this
at
on.
this as go ahead,
Pete?
Janet, sorry.
I think we have a quorum of the board who says this isn't for this biennium, but we do want to look at it. So not page 3, but
Yep.
page 2. Page 3 being the last page, the least priority. Okay, so number 8, fee waiver.
So I would categorize this similarly to the previous one, but
Okay.
welcome your all discussion on it.
Any thoughts on this one?
I
It's
feel the
also
same way
something
about this one as the last one.
Okay. I see some more nods. So let's put this one in the same place. Number 9, number 10, and number 11, I think are no-brainers and should be put forth for this biennium. Thoughts,
I agree.
Kirsten?
I agree.
Okay. I see some nods and thumbs up. Sarah? What's that mean? You don't think it is necessary, or?
No, I just, I worry that we're prioritizing and being maybe a little bit self-serving by advancing these and not some of the others.
Brooke?
These are mistakes in the statute that we're correcting. This is not oh, gee, we're worrying about our salaries.
Right.
This is a statute that is written wrong. It was left out. There were remnants. Needs to be corrected. Now.
I agree with that. Alex?
My thumbs up are still the same for 9,
Okay.
10, and 11. Yeah,
Okay.
happy to move on to 12.
Okay. Yeah,
So that's a majority,
mean-
so I'll keep that as high as long as I don't hear anything else.
say that again, Pete?
I'll keep that as an on the list high, as long as I don't hear anything else. Sound like that was the majority?
That was for 9, 10, and 11.
Yeah, got it.
Okay,
And I
Brooke?
think we're moving pretty solidly through these two, so I'm happy to make these changes and then, we can revisit again too next
Yeah,
meeting on Thursday.
yeah, sure. Brooke?
Yeah, and I think that, this is sort of in that category of change natural resources board to LURB. It's the real fundamental just errors that need to be corrected. There shouldn't be any controversy or any argument about it.
Are you talking about number 12?
No, 9, 10, and 11.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. I think we're done with 9, 10, and 11.
Okay, I'll move down then.
Number 12. I don't know if this is, I don't know about this. I'm not too worried about it, but I don't know if it's a correction or if it's,
Yeah, it's one of these things too that it was more of a concern before everyone was seated. And now that everyone's seated and the first reappointment or appointment period has occurred, seems to be less of an issue. That's my take on it.
there's something funny about what you say in the fourth, in the column. Following initial appointments, the members, except for the chair, shall be appointed for terms of 4 or 5 years. All terms shall begin on July 1 and expire. What is that? 4 or 5 years, and is that the old
Yeah.
language? Because I think we all are appointed for terms of 5 years, so I'm not
Yeah,
sure
I think
what.
that's probably a typo. I'll get rid of the 4. I think you're right. It's 5.
It might just be FOR was the word you were writing, and it switched
Oh,
to the
yeah.
number 4.
Yeah, I think you're right,
Years.
Brooke.
Terms of 5
Oh,
years.
Of 5 years,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is about recommending an annual commencement of terms on February 1, same as district commissioners' terms. I don't think this is a priority right now. But I think it's fine to have it on our list. Kirsten?
Yeah, I agree. Not a priority.
Brooke?
Well, I also don't think it's, look, the problem was that they appointed us for 6 months and then they said the new 5-year, in order to be staggered, and then so we're 1 to 5 years each. And then the re-upping renewal or the term is from July to June. So everything that we have been dealing with HR on our website, everyone has assumed that it's July 1st that we need to be reappointed. So I am the first one on the block. And in late April, early May, something like that, I communicated with the governor's office. And I think I'm just in a pile of, appointees that they'll get around to at some point. But the one thing that I think is not really appropriate is for us to change the dates. It's either one or the other. Right now, it doesn't even matter because our dates are, our new terms start on July, they end on June. I mean, if you want to technically correct, okay, we're only in for 6 months or whatever, you could do that. But I don't feel comfortable inserting just some new date a couple days after we actually started. We got appointed on January 1st. So introducing a new date, I'm not okay with. I don't think that's appropriate.
I'm inclined to agree with that. Alex?
Yeah, I agree. I think this should go on page 3, the lowest. Maybe it doesn't go off the list, but maybe we never actually act on it.
Yeah. Okay. Any disagreement with that sentiment? I guess not. Okay. 13. So this is a priority and we are working on this. And this requires an annotation to our Budget Adjustment Act. But basically, DHR interpreted that Pete's position is still limited service because it didn't say permanent. So we are taking the direction of the Commissioner of Human Resources to address this in a memo with our budget adjustment request. So as far as I'm concerned, this is top priority so that Pete has no so Pete feels secure in his position. How's that?
I'm happy to mark it that way, but yeah.
Sure you would be. Kirsten?
Yeah, so I do see this as a technical correction, because I think it was, always my interpretation that this was what the legislature, put forward.
Yeah.
Directors shall be full-time state employees, exempt. And so I think that's just how I see it, as a technical correction. And I
Yeah.
think we would include.
And it's also how finance and management saw it, but DHR wanted it to specifically say permanent. So,
More
Alex?
And I want to agree with you and Kirsten. It seems like an important technical correction that should be pursued in this upcoming session this year.
Okay. Sarah, any thoughts?
Agreed.
Okay, thanks. Number 14. Sarah, go ahead.
I was going to ask if we could sort of take all the interims as a slate, because the way that I took a look at all the interims is these are either a high priority or they're not, because if we don't ask for them in this legislative session, they are something that it's not going to be worthwhile asking necessarily in
Yeah.
the next legislative session. So
Yeah.
I was just going to say, maybe we can consider these all together as a slate.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Anybody have feelings about them as a slate? Brooke?
The one that I had identified as being of concern due to the inconsistency in the statute was about the priority housing project definition and the way the exemptions are written. Priority housing projects can happen in a floodway right now. Or there's no.
In a floodway? I don't think so. Flood hazard, maybe. Yeah. But not floodway. Just correcting the record.
Okay. My understanding is that all right, let me back up a minute. I want to make sure that priority housing projects are not being treated differently and being allowed to be put in places that are not a great place. Whereas we're saying, but you can't put other kind of housing in that place. And right now, have so many other things on my mind. I'm not clear on exactly which it was, but I would like to see protection for the priority housing projects on a level playing field with the rest of housing. Because I think it's an EJ issue to say, we're going to protect everybody else except affordable housing. I think that's a huge issue, and I think it should be addressed. And I'm not exactly sure how, because we're talking about a definition of PHPs, not later on with exemptions being specified about them. So we need probably our lawyers to help with that, but I think it's important.
What number is that, Pete? I don't see it on the screen.
That's line 14. But that just, so it's clear, that one includes the other interim exemptions that do not have the flood hazard river corridor language that's in some of the other interim exemptions. So just the motel hotel conversions and the commercial conversions and the ADUs.
Which all could be affordable housing too. So Brooke's point about, this is an environmental justice issue is important for all of those.
Yeah, I do want to point out though that these provisions and the potential oops that the legislature made by not mentioning flood hazard areas in some of these interim exemptions, it's not that they're going to happen in those areas. It's not like that was the policy that was, the unintended consequence. It's rather that the way it was structured, there won't be an Act 250 review of a project of that type if it's in a flood hazard area, whereas a project of a different type would go through Act 250 review, because there would be no exemption for those other types of projects, under the interim exemptions. So, and Brooke, I think you just have to understand, at least my experience with affordable housing projects is that the chances of them locating in a flood hazard area to begin with are exceedingly small. And they frequently cannot get the federal funding that are necessary to make those projects possible through low-income housing tax credits and the like, if they are located in a mapped flood hazard area. So I'm not saying it's not an awkward thing that the legislature did here. I agree that it is, but I'm not sure that we're going to be fixing anything by addressing the inconsistency.
Any other thoughts on this? Annette has a thought. Go ahead, Annette.
I am aware of a project that is moving forward that is in a flood hazard area that I think probably would not if it had to go to Act 250. So I just see this as an environmental justice issue. The fact is the legislature wrote these exemptions so that the only exemption from Act 250 is for affordable housing. And I think that's something that definitely needs to be addressed. And I agree that it doesn't mean that it won't get approved if it does go through Act 250. But the fact is that there are things being done. And right now, for instance, there are two different cases I'm aware of, one of which is in a flood hazard area that's going through Act 250 and one of which isn't. And it's not going through Act 250 because it's housing, whereas the other one is a gas station. And A&R has an active role to play in the Act 250 proceeding, but not in the municipal proceeding. So it is a distinction with a difference. And to say, well, maybe people can't get funding, I just think is very bad public policy, and that needs to be cleaned up. So thank you for letting me speak. Could you give me an idea of how much longer you're going to be going? Because I raised my hand also because it's almost 3 o'clock, and someone asked me to call when you were getting to the next agenda item. So could you give me a sense of when you think that might be?
3 minutes.
Hey, thank you.
Kirsten?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I understand, Alex, what you're saying, but if I'm not mistaken, I think that it also depends in part on whether or not the town participates in FEMA and, what is or is not in that local bylaw. So, and I'm would be curious if anyone has any insight as to whether or not this was, falls into the category of sort of technical correction, sort of legislative drafting oversight, or because it seems to be a little bit relevant to the, the ordering within the statute that fell out. And I'm not understanding if this was done intentionally or if it's just, some form of oversight, frankly. And so, but I agree with Brooke that I think we should be consistent with all types of housing in terms of this important, flood hazard area, flooding resiliency, and this whole, area of land use is only going to become, remain important over time. And so I think we want to be careful. So I think if it's seen as a technical correction or something that, I would be comfortable including it on the list of things that we would take up this year.
Right. And so the question is it a technical correction? And if it's not, then, the legislature made a policy decision, and is it our place to, tell them what we think correct policy is right now? I'm not sure. Alex.
Yeah, I have that same issue or dilemma. I guess what I really wanted to say is that if Sarah's point about taking these as a slate is something people think is worth using, there are a couple on here that I am more vested in, but I don't think are really technical corrections, and so yeah, it's hard. I don't. I think there's a lot, there's more work involved in these and there's more policy level decision
Yeah,
making in these. And so I don't know if that's something we should be doing or if we should be, maybe an alternative is that the entities that build affordable housing, that do priority housing projects primarily, perhaps we should be reaching out to them and saying, like, was this intended? It covers, the work that you do. And if it wasn't, is there some other group or is there a collaboration of entities that would recommend a change to the interim exemption for that particular environmental justice issue? Or maybe they would say, no, this was asked and answered. This was a policy decision and you don't like it and we understand why you don't like it, but so be it. I just don't know the answer to that. I don't feel
Yeah.
like we're the experts on this.
Right. Before, I want to hear from Sarah, but then I want to say that we're going to take this up again at our next meeting. And so we will move on to the next agenda item, but I want to hear from Sarah first.
I was just going to offer that is that we're at time, and I think that a lot of these interim exemption items on this list are things that, for better or for worse, we can't really get into the legislative intent. I think in applying these through Act 250, we're noticing some areas that could benefit from clarification on a variety of fronts. And I just think that it's with a lot of these, it's a now or never type scenario. Is it's either this legislative session or we're not going to. And I think where we can ask for clarity that will make for a better, more transparent and equitable process that also in terms of like a harm reduction thing, I think that is pretty important. And so I will continue the conversation, but I just think on the interim exemptions list, moving them forward as a slate, making them a priority, not necessarily getting too bogged down in terms of the pedigree of them, but really just in terms of how do we ensure that the development that's happening is safe and effective and equitably applied. So to be continued, but
That's
thanks.
a good way to put it, Sarah. Thank you. So we'll come back to this at our next meeting, which is it
Thursday.
Thursday?
Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday. Okay.
Yeah, thank you all. It was helpful.
All right, next on the agenda, studies and reports, process and updates. And the first one is just a very quick update. We have scheduled a meeting for the Rutland Regional Plan review. It will include site visits to a number of municipalities before the meeting. We will have a bus available for the site visits. Leaving from Rutland across from the RPC offices. And that will happen from noon to 3:45. And then at 4:00, we will convene at the RPC offices in their meeting room and hold a 2-hour public meeting on the plan. Brooke, your hand is up. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, Madam Chair, if we might take a short break before the end of the day.
Oh, absolutely. It is 2 hours in, isn't it? Yeah, we can take a break here. Is that okay with everyone? 10-minute break? Okay, let's do that and we'll come back at 3:15, so 12-minute break. Okay,
Thank
see you in a
you.
few. Oh. There's the internet is out in Montpelier, which is where our meeting is centered. Pete is trying a hotspot.
That has worked in the past at other meetings that had this issue. Hopefully it works this time.
Yeah. Hi, Ed. You got a question?
Hi, how are you? Hi, everyone. I just
So I
didn't-
just need to tell you that we are not recording. So this is an offline conversation at this point. Anything that you need to say in our public meeting needs to wait.
Okay.
We're having a
I was just-
problem in Montpelier.
I was just curious, did I miss the date of that site visit in Rutland, or did you not say that?
Oh, it's on the 16th
Of October?
of this, yeah.
Okay,
So, yeah.
great.
So
Thank
10
you.
days, 10 days from today.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if the Teams recording is still active during this internet outage at sort of the home base.
Yeah.
Because all of us are part of that. And yeah, when that happened to Kirsten and me, at our working group meeting for Criterion 8C the other week, the Teams meeting continued and the recording continued, just showing the online participants, not the
Ah.
in-room, and the transcript
Interesting.
continued. So it's possible
Okay.
that what I'm saying right now will still
Is
be in the
recorded.
recording and in the transcript.
Okay. Great. Here's Kirsten.
It's
And
been
Annette.
continuing to record.
What'd you
does-
say, Annette?
I said it has been continuing to record.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, and there they are.
Can you
Okay.
hear us?
Yes, we can.
We're running this off of a
Phone?
hotspot off my Verizon phone,
Okay.
which has a couple bars. So we'll kind of see how it goes. And we'll keep an eye
And-
and see if the regular internet comes back.
Okay. Thanks, Kirsten.
Hmm.
Right, we are back, and just since Ed had asked, the Rutland Regional Planning Commission pre-application review meeting will occur on Thursday, October 16th. Site visits beginning at noon, ending at 3:45, and the public meeting to begin at 4, going till 6 at the Rutland Regional Planning Commission offices at 16 Evelyn Street, an accessible building. And the bus is also ADA accessible. So next up, we have Tier 3 rule, Draft 2. And Alex, do you want to share screen or would you rather I think it might make sense for you to, so you can scroll through.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
I will do that now.
Okay. And do you want to give an overview and then ask if anyone has questions? Okay, go ahead.
So we've talked about Tier 3 quite a lot, and it's not my intent today to rehash any of those discussions. Sarah in past meetings has asked the good question of what do you want to get out of the board's discussion on this particular agenda item on any given topic, and I think that's a good question. So what I'm hoping to get is just your understanding that this draft reflects most of what we discussed at our prior meetings. It is not that this is the final draft for, the rule. It's far from that. But I am looking to clean it up, create a clean version, post it to our website, and start advertising our public engagement sessions that are later in October with this as the draft for people to, provide comments on. So, like I said, we had lots of discussion on this in July, and then we had additional discussion just a few weeks ago. And these are the revisions I made with track changes shown. So I'm happy to walk through it, or if you've had a chance to look at it, and if anything jumped out at you as like, whoop, Alex just invented something that wasn't part of our discussions, or that, that looks wrong. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for if there's something that you have an issue with.
Okay, any board members have any of those types of issues that Alex is describing? Brooke?
On page 2, under number 2, authority, well, now it's called scope and severability. I have seen these kinds of provisions in contracts, for example, like, if anything's deemed to be illegal, then it doesn't affect the rest of the document. I'm just not familiar seeing this in a statute or rule necessarily, and I was just
I've seen it in regulatory documents at the municipal level, zoning regulations. That's what I'm familiar with from my past work. I don't have enough background in these sorts of rules to know how common it is, but this was a suggestion made by our legal team to add it. And I will say that this is not the language that they recommended. They gave me some pointers and I did the best I could. And our legal team is still reviewing this draft, so we don't have formal comments from them on this, which I don't think is a huge deal because they've helped and have looked at prior drafts, and we're going to get their review going forward. But that's the short answer, Brooke, is that I'm not sure, but it was recommended by the legal team to include a severability section.
Sarah?
So I have a few things to work through, and I might take them in reverse order in terms of questions. I think let me get to that section first. So on the bottom of page 7, you offered about construction of improvements and maintaining existing trail, and you had alternatively defer to existing trail jurisdiction for 1 and 10 acre towns. And I just wanted to hear, Alex, your take on why or why not. I think you're proposing our own different definition rather than simply referring to Rule 71, but just curious, as I was reading through, curious in your take.
Yeah, good question. So,
and I have some other questions, but I'll lower my
yeah, we'll go to your next ones after this one. So, if none of you had said anything, I was going to say, okay, there are at least 2 or 3 items that I'm going to walk into these public engagement sessions saying that we have not figured out yet. This is one of them. I don't think we've figured out how trails and tier 3 jurisdiction are yet going to work. Rule 71 is, at first, our A&R partner said, make sure you're consistent with Rule 71 because it addresses trails. And so I eagerly went and read Rule 71 because I hadn't really looked at it in depth before. And Pete can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that all it really does is say that it clarifies how the acreages of the land are actually going to be calculated. So, a trail is going to be assumed to have a 10-foot wide corridor, and you're going to calculate acreage based on that 10-foot wide corridor. And it's going to essentially, the jurisdictional trigger is going to be the municipal, state, county improvement trigger of actual, area impacted within, assuming that 10-foot wide corridor rather than a parcel size basis. And then the rule goes on to say, but if it's on a mixture of private and public lands, then it can shift and the acreage can, determination can change. I'm doing a really bad job of explaining that, Pete. So if you want to, clarify Rule 71 at all, as you understand it in that regard, feel free. What I'm proposing here is just to be very conservative, essentially, and say, if you're maintaining an existing trail within that corridor, the 10-foot wide one that is mentioned in Rule 71, then you get a pass. We don't need you to be in Act 250 jurisdiction, even though it's in a Tier 3 area. But if you're not, if you're constructing new trails in a Tier 3 area, you get 100 feet, and then you need an Act 250 permit. So it's a pretty conservative approach. And I don't know that it's the right one. And so that's why there's this reference to, well, maybe there's a way within the current 1 acre, 10 acre threshold that it could be done instead.
I think a trail is a very different development than building buildings and paving roads and whatnot. And I'm not sure that the 1 acre, 10 acre triggers are relevant. And maybe for that reason, I prefer just the construction of improvements to create a new trail of less than 100 feet in length. Any other thoughts
Yeah.
from board members?
I was going to say, I think it simplifies. I always question if there's already something existing, why not just use that? But in this case, I think that what Alex is proposing simplifies. So I would agree with Janet.
The impression I got from our discussions prior was that you all did want to be conservative. You did not want a bunch of new trails being created potentially through a very sensitive area and not going through an Act 250 review. And so that's why I'm proposing this. But I want to acknowledge that I don't think as a board we've really fully figured this one out yet. And I think that's okay. I think we can go in and get public comment and acknowledge that and see what people have to say about it.
Kirsten?
Yes, I don't think you did completely terrible explaining how Rule 71 works. You're right in that it's not this sort of definitive thing that in of itself says if you do or don't need a permit. It's a qualifier on those other areas of the statute. But I'm fine with putting this out for public comment and then having additional board conversation later around this details. I agree, we haven't discussed it. And I did want to ask about item H, which concerns farming, logging, forestry. But in the language on page 8, it also identifies construction of roads used primarily for farming, logging, or forestry purposes. And we have not discussed an interpretation of the word primarily. And so if there's improvements for farming, logging, or forestry that could include some road construction that would be specifically to support those uses, that's one thing, but this could potentially open it up to encompass roads built for other purposes also that are not necessarily limited to farming, logging, or forestry. And so I think I don't support that conceptually. And so I would like to strike that second sentence in paragraph H as currently drafted.
And where I was going with that was the road rule. So during the working group discussions, there was a desire to be specific about the exemptions for farming, logging, and forestry, especially logging and forestry from our A&R friends. And the road rule does not require Act 250 review, does not trigger for roads that are primarily for farming, logging, or forestry purposes. I can't remember if that's the exact language or
It is.
or
It does
it
use
is.
the word primarily.
yeah. So I was
I
just
checked.
grabbing the language from the road rule and putting it in here to say we're gonna treat Tier 3 areas the same way. But we don't have to. But I think that was the feedback from A&R particularly that those uses, farming, logging, and forestry, do require road building and that those ought to be exempt. But Kirsten, your issue is with
Right,
the
and
word
I'm not-
primarily.
Right, my issue is with that second sentence in paragraph H, not with the first one.
So it seems that the second sentence is superfluous if it's already in the road rule language.
Well, the road rule is not the same as the
The-
tier 3 rule,
Tier
so,
three.
Oh, but if H is construction of improvements for farming, logging, or forestry, that includes roads, doesn't it?
that was the
Yes, but-
question and concern that came up during the working group meeting. I think it was Charlie Hancock from Forest and Parks that said, does it? We should make it clear in the rule whether construction of a road to access a lot for forestry purposes is exempt under tier 3 or not.
So that language that you just used is clear. And maybe we could use that instead of roads used primarily. So construction of a road to provide access for farming, logging, or forestry operations or uses is exempt. Brooke,
So this is more an overview or general statement about the construction of the statute. Act 250's definition of development specifically excludes logging so long it's below 2,500 feet. So logging is not captured in the definition of development. Therefore, it is not necessary to exempt that activity which never got caught in the salad bowl of development. It is only if you caught the activity in that salad bowl and it's under the definition of development that then you would have to exempt it because it would be defined as in that salad bowl. So I don't think that this is an appropriate place for it. I don't think it needs an exemption. The road rule itself, if you're writing in an exemption to make sure that road building in connection with that is not consumed within that, that arena. But I am concerned about like inserting these exemptions in all these different places. If you're not capturing it to begin with, it is unnecessary. The argument is, I'm not developing anything. You have no jurisdiction over me.
Brooke, you're
So
absolutely right that this is duplicative. I totally agree. But again, during the working group conversations, ANR's input, especially Forest Parks and Recreation, was they would be more comfortable if it was duplicated in this one spot. That if there was a clear statement that construction of improvements for farming, logging, and forestry purposes was exempt from tier 3 jurisdiction. You're right. It's not necessary because it's part of the exemption. I'll scroll up. It's part of exemption A, which is the same activities not included in the word development. You're totally right about that. I added it at their request. And I
So
don't think
maybe-
it does harm to have it there because
Alex.
it's a sensitive issue. So that's all.
Alex, maybe it should be a sub sentence under A to make it clear that we're not adding a new exemption here.
We could, or we could eliminate it altogether, which is I think what Brooke is saying, because it's already covered. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
be respectful of the feedback we got from the working group. And I don't think an extra sentence here or there is going to
Right, I'm just saying that if
Make
it
a big
were
deal.
a sub sentence under 7A, it would not give the impression that we are adding a new
Right.
exemption that isn't already there. It's a clarification. Sarah?
I have something different if we're okay to move to something different.
well, I respect Brooke's feedback and I think someone else made the same point. It may have been Mr. Weiss, with the comments he submitted. So Brooke, are you amenable to Janet's compromise where we still mention it, but it's done under 7A with a proviso that said, for additional emphasis, this includes, this exemption includes the construction for farming, logging, forestry.
Yeah, I think I'd like Jenny and or Rebecca's kind of input on this because, I'm coming from the lawyer perspective and it's like, how do I argue my person's case? The answer is you're not subject to jurisdiction, not in the salad bowl. But then are you then obligated to make these other arguments? And it's caught up in the exemption. So all I'm trying to do is we're talking about the integrity of a statute. It shouldn't be duplicative. It should be one place that specifies it. However, having said all of that, this is a very unusual statute with pages and pages of a definition of development. So I understand the desire to have this in there. My preference would be as sort of a note under one that's like, and remember, this doesn't apply to logging.
Gotcha. That's helpful. And I
Yeah.
will say that I thought I remembered what I was going to say. Yeah, I think Charlie Hancock's concern did evolve from the wood products manufacturer's study. And again, the salad bowl you keep talking about, which is an interesting analogy. I think, as we all know, Forest Parks and Recreation is still a little concerned about whether logging is out or in the salad bowl. And I read the statute and I say, it's 100% always out. That's what the statute says under the section you quoted. And yet, when we talked about it in wood products manufacturing, there was a little bit of a finer point made that, well, sometimes it falls into the salad bowl. And so I think that's where their concern is and why they want clarity in this tier 3 area. But got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So my ultimate point is, glom on and give the reassurance that it's not in the salad bowl. I would bristle at exemption language.
Got it.
Got it?
Thank you.
Sarah?
If you're done with the salad and ready to move on to the soup. Okay, fantastic. Definitions. I think there are a couple additional things that it might be easier to present as definitions versus in the text. I think you have a couple of them on page 6. You have qualified professional, and then you try to give some examples. I think I would feel more comfortable with you pulling that out and defining it and being a little bit more specific in a definition and working through that. Maybe with A&R can help in terms of what would be a qualified professional for different instances. There's also a term on page 6. You have capitalized tier 3 involved land. And so I think that might be something where you might want to say involved land means, and you could reference existing definitions elsewhere in rule or statute, but I just think that would be something that would.
So that's a
benefit.
really sticky one. There's your first suggestion is a really good one with qualified professional, and Kirsten actually suggested that last time, and I couldn't figure out how to honor her suggestion. And I think what you're asking for will help do that. So I'll try to make that change. But in terms of involved land, that is a term of art in our program that's defined in the general rules, and because our concept of involved land in tier 3 is different from that definition in the general rules, I felt like I needed to define it differently in the tier 3 rules. And I don't know that it's an artful way of doing it. I just tacked the word tier 3 in on the front end and said, tier 3 involved land has a different definition than just involved land. The difference being that it's only that portion of the involved land that falls within a tier 3 area. Once you exit the tier 3 area, even if it's involved land under the general rule, it's not tier 3 involved land anymore.
Right,
Right,
and so
so
that
there
might
is
be a
a
very
tier
good
3
definition.
It is in
Sorry.
the definitions.
Yeah, I put in a definition for tier 3 involved lands.
All right, maybe I was looking for involved lands and didn't see it there.
Oh, right. It's under tier 3 involved land.
Okay.
What's your next one, Sarah?
Oh, perfect. All right, switching maybe more onto the main course. I apologize, skipping around a little bit. Headwaters, if you're willing to sort of talk about headwaters, and I think this shows up page 4, where headwaters are now being included in tier 3. And I know as a board, we had a conversation about, are they in, are they out, pros and cons in terms of municipalities getting things listed as headwaters. If we include it in tier 3, might be seen as a deterrent, and there are maybe other better protections elsewhere. So that was just one that I wanted to touch on.
Yeah, so I'm looking at page 3. That's where headwater stream area is defined. I'm not sure if that's the section of the draft that you were referring to.
No, I was looking down at page 4,
Okay.
under number 4, and that tier 3 areas shall include, and now it's headwater stream areas, which before,
Gotcha.
I know we talked about particularly like class 1 headwaters.
Yeah, so
There aren't very
there's
many of, and right.
So there's a distinction here. The Act 181 said that we needed to look at least 6 potential critical natural resources. Headwater streams was one of those, and that's being included in this draft. A very, very honed version that's only the steepest slope areas, only the areas with, poorly draining soils, only areas above 1,200 feet in elevation. But the headwater stream areas, in that very tight sense, are included in draft 2. Act 181 also said of the 6 that Class A waters had to be considered, and they're not in this draft. We talked about whether they should be, and my recommendation was not to include them, and rather to rely on ANR's water quality standards, which are admittedly interim and have been a long time coming in terms of the anti-degradation rule. So I think you might be conflating those two, because Class A waters are not in here. There's no like Class 1 or 2 headwater distinction. Within the headwater stream areas, there is a distinction about what catchment areas constitute a headwater stream area, and those relate to first, second, and third order streams. And in the first draft, we had just first and second order streams, and this draft includes third order streams in order to capture more areas and eliminate some of the gaps, one of which Annette Smith noted in her backyard. So that's sort of in the weeds, but yeah.
No, thank you. I appreciate the clarification. Perhaps I was conflating.
Do you have any more, Sarah? Kirsten?
I have another suggested wording change within the definitions. If you scroll up to page 3, the definition of linear transportation feature. And this may sound a little bit familiar, but it's this use of the word, it does not include access principally used for agricultural forestry logging. It's just the word principally we haven't discussed. And so this is suggesting that a road used for purposes other than agriculture, forestry logging, there could be some perhaps, secondary use of such a road. And then by, maybe by extension, some other driveway or development activity, it's just not clear. And I just don't think we want to say this, that use the word principally here, because I think it creates that ambiguity, and we need to figure out what we think the word primarily means, so I think we should just omit that second or the third sentence that has the word principally in it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Kirsten, and it rings true with what you were saying on the exemptions. And so I'll change that sort of the way Janet was suggesting, to get rid of the word principally, at least in that section. I'd prefer to keep the third sentence, but just eliminate the word principally. Or somehow maybe somehow change it, because the point in this case is to clarify that accesses for ag and forestry and logging are not considered linear transportation features. And so it's yeah, it's important to how do I want to put this? The way linear transportation features factors into the exemptions, I don't want it to be the case that somebody can say there's a logging road and that's an existing logging road, and now I can do anything I want within 50 feet of it, and I'm exempt from Act 250. I can turn it into a regular road. And by leaving the sentence in some fashion, it makes sure that doesn't happen.
So Alex, I would be more comfortable if we are to retain that third sentence, I would be more comfortable with wording that would say, that would address both the construction and the use. That would say, for instance, it does not include access or construction of access roads, construction and use of access roads for agriculture, forestry, logging. Like just some tweaking of the wording that gets at that it such an excluded road would have to be both constructed and used for those other quote unquote exempt purposes.
Gotcha.
I understand what Brooke's saying too about the construction of the statute and the use of the word exemption.
And Alex, while you're doing it, it shouldn't be agricultural, it should be agriculture, since you're talking about used for.
Oh, yeah, good point. No,
Okay.
Thank you, Janet. But Kirsten, I think I can make that change, and thank you for giving me some wording to get it going with.
Brooke?
On that wording, I've been dabbling in my mind. The word principally, and there's also primarily. So maybe we could just give some thought to that. Principally is like referring to the most important, highest ranking or main element, where primarily is more about it's mainly or mostly used, by that. I don't know if that would be of any beneficial use. And then there were just a couple other things that I wanted to inquire about.
Go for it, Brooke.
Okay. So definitions on page 5. Where are you? You're on 3. Could you go to 5? Site specific. Go up a little bit.
Okay.
Go. Looks like it might be 4.
All the definitions on page 5 are strikeouts. So are you on 5 or page 4 perhaps?
Hold on, let me see where I'm at. Wanted
It's
to do
not a
the
definition.
I'm looking for the site specific.
Right, go down to the bottom of page 5, Alex.
5. Yeah,
Got it. Not a definition, but section 5.
Sorry. Yep. So just a suggestion about, let's see, the second sentence is part of a request for a JO. If you just change the wording around, I think it will be a little bit better. A landowner or an applicant of a proposed development or subdivision. Just switch the order of applicant and landowner.
Gotcha. I can do that.
Okay. And the other question that I have on this is farther down on page 6, where you pick up with obvious mapping errors may simply be identified by the applicant or landowner. That sounds it's like, well, what's obvious to you? Is it obvious to me? It just sounds sort of like really general. And then the next sentence, otherwise data shall be compiled by a qualified professional. Now, I know you're trying to give examples depending on what the resource is, but I really loathe the word etc. in a rule, because I don't know whether we want to give examples or just say something like, or other applicable expert for whatever the area is, something that conveys that. But it just seems like, well, too open-ended. If you're sort of defining it and then you're just saying, or anybody else.
So Sarah's suggestion, which speaks to Kirsten's comments at a prior meeting, was to actually create a definition for qualified professional and provide more specificity in there. So I can try to do one or the other. I can't do both, right? I can either pull it into the definitions and provide more detail, or I can take out the examples and just leave it as qualified professional and let our staff and applicants wonder what that means. And we could provide guidance, right? Doesn't have to be in the rule. We could provide guidance on what, a qualified professional is in this context.
Yeah, I'm really torn because I think your examples are spot on. So anyway, it was just a thought. I'm not requiring I'm not saying
Yeah.
change anything. It's just, it makes me feel a little bit,
As for your
not
first
certain
comment,
about it.
I agree with you that sentence about obvious mapping errors is general. But again, it speaks to a comment from the working group, which I thought was a very practical sort of common sense comment, which was if it doesn't require a qualified professional to simply look at the map and say, you got it wrong, this is a parking lot, it always has been a parking lot, or it's my house, and it's always been my house, and you mapped it as a tier 3 area when it shouldn't have been, then we didn't want to force someone to hire a professional to say those words when if a landowner could simply make that point and a district coordinator could then make a JO based on obvious information. I don't know how else to write it though. So if you have a suggestion how to make it more eloquent or clear, I'm happy to take it.
And one really, I don't have any bright ideas for you, but one other thing I just wanted to point out that I really appreciated was your language, page 6 to 7, about the 100-foot outside the tier 3 area, not extending beyond that. I really like that. I thought that was very well crafted. And I appreciate that because I know we had bounced that around earlier. That very last sentence for all other improvements. So thank you for all of your work. I know it's been a massive effort.
Kirsten?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's fine to omit the examples of what might constitute a qualified consultant and just leave it at qualified consultant. And if the board wants to put forward some guidance later, that's fine. If there could very well be other professionals who would be well qualified to do that kind of work. So we don't have to enumerate some examples here in the rule.
Okay,
It's a
thanks.
super helpful suggestion, Kirsten, and
Yeah,
I
fine.
want to defer to you on that because you were a district coordinator
Fine.
who had to deal with qualified professionals. So I just want to ask Sarah, your suggestion was to define that term, but this Kirsten's suggestion is like take out some of the examples. Do you think we still need a definition, Sarah, if we take out the EG examples?
That's a tough one and one that I'm struggling with on tier
Yeah.
1 for significant communities, RTEs, because there doesn't seem to be right now a definition that we can just plug and play. So,
We can punt
I'm
it to
not sure.
guidelines. We can punt it to guidelines. Okay, good enough. That's an answer.
Yep.
Thank you both for the perspective.
So, can I make a comment about the sort of the definitions in general?
Yes.
You preface the definitions section by saying unless otherwise defined in these rules, terms are the same as they are in statute. And then for several of the definitions, you say what it generally means, and then you say, but here, it's this. I don't think we need the generally stuff. Say what it means in this rule and
Yeah.
leave the rest out.
Yeah, so good for you for catching my obstinance. That I think that suggestion was made earlier,
that what
and I
it
think
is?
I think the legal team also made that suggestion, and I like to write for a layperson. And I like lay people to understand context before I give them specifics. And so that's why I'm being obstinate and I'm including these generally means the following, so that, someone who, um,
I think it's confusing
you
to
think
the
it's
lay
confusing.
person.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it confuses a lay reader. So does it mean that or doesn't it? So for this, we can always provide guidance that gives that kind of background. For this, I don't think it should be there. So that pertains to critical natural resource, habitat connector, and then on headwater stream area, I think you should leave the note out. It's a definition. You don't need the note there. Note pursuant to. So, and then also on headwater stream, there's just a grammatical error. It means areas or it means area. I think you mean area because all the rest of the language is, has. So you're not talking about plural areas, you're talking about area. Means
I
an
will-
area with, so,
Gotcha.
okay.
Yes. I will
Sorry,
make those
those are
changes.
just sort of, they're not that substantive, but I think,
That's okay. I
okay,
want, we're gonna get a lot of feedback, I hope, at the end of the
Yeah.
month on this. And some of
Yeah.
it's gonna be pretty pointed. And so, I want to be able to walk into those meetings and say, this is not a done deal. This is an early draft, but PS, this is not the Alex Weinhagen draft. This is the board's draft 2,
Okay.
and we want your feedback. So I
Okay.
will make it yours too, Janet.
okay. So if it's okay, I'd like to move on to appeals, unless there are questions from the broader audience on, the tier 3 draft at this point. Oh, Sarah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Alex if you feel like you've gotten what you've needed out of us today, if you're envisioning a secondary work session on this, or
Nope, I have what I needed. The only other thing I wanted to let you all know is that there are some unresolved issues that this draft has not figured out. Trails, we talked about that a little bit. Thomas Weiss actually made a very apt comment. He always makes apt comments, but one that I appreciated is that the habitat connectors definition doesn't do a very good job of specificity about how they're being defined, and that's intentional because
We don't know yet.
they're not there yet. And so there's a map that shows our initial version of them, but the GIS issues that we've been having, both me and ADS, in trying to make them better, we have not resolved them yet. And so I just want you to know that the habitat connectors mapping that you see on the map viewer is where we stand, but it's going to evolve. And some of the changes I discussed with you last time have not yet been made because of those technical issues. And then one other last thing is that my brain was turning a bit on how to make sure that the regular Act 250 jurisdictional triggers are somehow referenced in the tier 3 rules so that those triggers still, are in force within tier 3 areas and there isn't some misunderstanding about that. The easiest one is the road rule, right? The road rule is not mentioned in this draft, but the road rule specifically applies to any place outside of a tier 1 area. So it does apply in tier 3 areas and therefore it's jurisdictional. It doesn't seem like it's really necessary in the tier 3 rules, but I feel like there needs to be a reference somewhere. I'll work with our legal team on
Yeah.
that, but I just wanted to give you a heads up about that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alex.
And,
Thank
and
you.
one more thing, Janet, sorry. There is a provision that talks about us doing outreach to municipalities and landowners that will be impacted by this. And some folks have commented like, there's nothing in the draft rule about that. Well, that's because we haven't done it yet. Like we haven't had a together enough rule to really begin that process.
We need the
public
map.
Right. The public engagement sessions in October, later this month, will start that process. That's part of that process. But I anticipate we'll go further than that, but we need to start somewhere.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments on the draft tier 3 rule? Okay, let's move on to appeals draft report review. Alex, can you stop sharing?
Yes, sorry about that.
So, today, let me start off by saying I'm not asking for any answers today unless the board wants to offer answers to these next questions that I want to pose. But it's really important that by Thursday, I have some direction on this because we need to issue a report. And what I want to talk about today is the memo from the judiciary, which I asked them to generate for us because we had a lot of information from stakeholders and I wanted right from the, don't mean to say this impolitely or anything, but from the horse's mouth. I wanted to verify with the court what their practices are in trying to shorten the timeframes of processing appeals and what their judges are involved in, their clearance rates, etc. So if you don't mind, I would like to share my the memo that I sent you from the judiciary to go over it quickly, because I think that there are some really important points that we need to consider before making our recommendation. Now, first of all, the first page of the document that I shared with folks and have on screen, it's an email. So I PDF the email and then there is the attachment memo that comes later. So this was from Judge Zone. He and I had a conversation and I sent him an email asking a whole slew of questions. And so he responded to that and then he wrote up for us his thoughts and information that they had gathered in response to a lot of my inquiries. So first of all, I wanted to point out that the Judge Zone and the judiciary have already put into motion the Rule 5 change, which will save 30 days, requiring the statement of questions to be filed with a notice of appeal. Excellent. That's terrific because it is definitely going to shorten at least by a month. Now, secondly, this is about the JOs and talking to you about the standard of review that we talked about last time, and then we landed, I think, on the supplemental record review. This was the point he was making is